At Thanksgiving dinner, my brother lifted his wine and said, loud enough for everyone, "Some of us still live off mom and dad." I sat there and kept eating. Last week, he texted asking for a loan. I just wrote back, "Try the ones you said I still need." He never replied. If someone you trusted humiliated you in front of your whole family, would you just swallow it and move on? Or would you look for a way to make sure he regretted it? I'm Julia, 34, single, and I live in a condo that used to be a starter place, but I never moved out. It's quiet, mostly retirees and a few young families. My parents' house is 20 minutes away, the same split level I grew up in. My brother Scott is 3 years younger than me. He has a wife, 2 kids under 5, a dog, a decent house with a swing set in the backyard. He's a project manager at a construction firm. My parents call him every night. They watch his kids every weekend. My mom keeps a drawer of snacks at her place just for them. I work as an independent IT contractor. Remote jobs, short-term gigs, nothing flashy. It pays more than people think, but it's not the kind of job you can explain to someone who's never left the same company in 30 years. My parents still ask when I'll find a real job. At family dinners, my mom always brings it up. "How's the job search, Julia? Any permanent offers?" Scott's wife, Emily, will smile and say, "My friend's company is hiring admin assistants." I laugh it off. Every time, it feels a little different. Last Thanksgiving, it was my turn to bring dessert. I showed up with 2 pies and a box of cookies. Scott hugged me at the door. My parents barely looked up from their grandkids. When we sat down to eat, my dad made the joke he always makes. "Maybe next year, Julia will bring a boyfriend instead of cookies." Emily giggled. Even my mom smiled. I looked at Scott, but he just shrugged. It was supposed to be funny. I smiled, too, but my hands were shaking under the table. I've always paid my rent on time, covered my own emergencies, never asked for help. I thought they respected that. But that night, I saw it in the way my parents looked at me, like I was the family project that never got finished. I realized how quiet I'd been, letting them write my story for me. The table was too long for the dining room. My father had pulled it out from the wall, wedging the extra leaves in, so half the chairs pressed against the sideboard. The overhead light made everyone look tired. I could smell gravy and the charred rim of the turkey. My brother Scott had already refilled his wine glass twice. His wife, Jenna, kept reaching over the centerpiece, sliding him more potatoes, more bread, her bracelets clinking. I was at the far end, between my mother and the window. The radiator kept clicking on and off below me. I'd barely touched my food. My nephew was playing with his peas, stacking them up on his knife, and my father was already hinting for someone to clear the plates, but no one moved. There was that soft lull after the first wave of eating, the adults all pushing back their chairs a little, talking about nothing. Scott tapped his glass with his fork. Not hard, just enough that everyone looked up. He leaned back, grinning, his shirt already untucked above his waistband. He raised his glass and looked straight at me, not at anyone else. "Well," he said, "some of us still live off mom and dad." He tilted his glass, waiting. My cousin laughed. My aunt made a little "oh" noise. My father coughed into his napkin and tried to stand, but my mother put her hand on his elbow. Jenna snorted and slid the stuffing bowl toward Scott, like she was rewarding him. My nephew looked at me, confused. I felt the blood rush into my cheeks. I pressed my napkin between my palms, under the table. The edge of the table cut into my wrists. Nobody said anything else for a few seconds. The silence was sharp. My mother looked down at her lap. I could hear the clock in the hallway ticking. Scott grinned at me, like he was waiting for a comeback. I didn't give him one. I glanced at my plate. The turkey was dry. I thought about getting up and going to the kitchen, but I didn't want to give them the show. Jenna reached for the cranberry sauce. She caught my eye, smiled with her mouth closed, and then turned away. She started a new conversation with my cousin about Christmas plans. My father straightened up and started refilling water glasses, but his hand was shaking. My mother took a long sip of her wine and didn't look at me. My nephew dropped his fork. It bounced against the plate and rolled onto the carpet. He started to cry, just a little whimper. Jenna leaned over, picked it up, and handed it to him without wiping it off. The sound filled the whole room, but nobody scolded him. I kept my eyes on my food. My hands hurt from gripping the napkin. Scott's words hung in the air, heavier than the smell of turkey. I wondered if anyone would say something, maybe smooth it over, but the conversation just moved on like nothing had happened. My mother finally turned to me and whispered, "Are you all right?" So quietly I barely heard her. I nodded. She squeezed my wrist under the table. Her nails pressed into my skin. Scott was already pouring another glass of wine. He and Jenna were laughing about something on his phone. My father stacked empty plates and brought them to the kitchen, his shoulders hunched. The rest of the table tried to pretend everything was normal. Nobody looked at me. I unfolded my napkin, laid it flat on my lap, and forced myself to eat a piece of cold turkey. The taste made my throat close up. After a few minutes, my aunt asked about my old job, the one I'd left months ago. She smiled at me, too brightly, and before I could answer, Scott cut in, saying something about how the city chews people up, especially when they don't have a plan. I didn't reply. I just nodded, took a sip of water, and stared at the candle dripping wax onto the tablecloth. The rest of dinner blurred together, serving pie, clearing plates, pretending to listen. Scott's joke stayed with me, caught in the back of my throat, sourer than the wine. The dining room emptied out slowly, chairs scraping and people gathering plates. I picked up my glass, still half full, and carried it into the kitchen. Scott stood over the sink, sleeves rolled up, flicking his wrist so water splashed across the rim of a chipped plate. The window above the sink was fogged. He didn't turn when I came in. I set my glass down on the counter, letting the sound settle between us. My hands felt cold. I watched his back for a moment, then stepped closer. "You know I pay my own bills," I said, voice steady but quiet. He didn't look at me. Just kept rinsing the next plate, his movements too fast, like he wanted to finish and leave. "Relax, Jules. It's just a joke." His tone was flat, but I could see his jaw moving tight. A pause hung there. I looked down at the edge of the counter, at a water ring left by someone's mug. I pressed my finger over it, wiping it away. He started stacking plates harder, the ceramic clatter louder than before. He was putting his back to me, shoulders hunched, but I could see his face in the window's reflection, mouth set, eyes narrowed. Mom walked in then, carrying a bowl with scraps. She caught the last part of his sentence. She didn't meet my eyes, just dumped the scraps into the compost bin. "He didn't mean anything," she said, not even stopping. She moved around me to the dishwasher, opening it and sliding out the bottom rack. Her hand brushed against mine, quick and impersonal. I stared at her, then at Scott. Neither of them looked up. Mom started humming, low and tuneless, as she stacked bowls. Scott rinsed another plate and dropped it into the sink, the sound sharp and echoing. I waited for her to say something else. She just kept humming, not facing me. "I pay my own rent," I said, a little louder this time. Mom just said, "You know how he is, Jules." Scott snorted. He still didn't turn to face me. He just flicked the tap off and shook water from his hands, droplets flying onto my shirt. I stepped back. "It was a joke, Jules." "God." He grabbed a dish towel and wiped his hands, not even looking in my direction. He tossed the towel onto the counter and leaned against the sink, arms crossed. "You make it sound like I'm freeloading," I said. He rolled his eyes. "Don't be so sensitive." Mom started closing the dishwasher, hands fumbling with the latch. She glanced at me for half a second, then away. I stood there, feeling the heat rising in my face. The kitchen felt smaller with all three of us in it. No one said anything for a long moment. Scott finally broke the silence, picking up another plate and dropping it into the sink with a heavy clatter. It bounced, then settled, and a chip splintered off the rim. "Nice," Mom said, voice tight. He shrugged. "They're old plates, who cares?" I kept my eyes on the chipped plate. White dust scattered in the sink, already mixing with the water. Scott looked at me, almost smiling. "Hey, if you want to pay my bills too, I won't say no." I didn't answer. I watched him walk out of the kitchen, leaving his wet footprints across the tile. Mom shut the dishwasher and wiped her hands on her pants. She didn't look at me. "You know how things are," she said again, softer this time. Then she left too, following Scott's trail out of the room. I was left with the chipped plate and the water running down the inside of the sink. The kitchen light buzzed. I turned off the tap, wiped my hands, and stared at the spot where Scott had been standing. The ring I'd wiped off the counter was already coming back. 3 days after the dinner, I was at my desk sorting through invoices for work. My phone buzzed once. I glanced over, saw Scott's name, and almost ignored it. I thought it would be some follow-up jab about the other night, or maybe a meme he thought was clever. Instead, it was a short text. There was a PDF attached, just under the message. I clicked it. It loaded slowly, the little wheel spinning. When it popped up, I saw the name of a local auto shop, a line of work completed, and at the bottom in big bold letters, "Paid, Lisa Reynolds." The date was today. I just sat there, staring at it. My brother, the same one who'd called me a leech in front of everyone, who'd done it so easily it almost seemed rehearsed, was now asking for almost $1,500. Not for his own emergency, but for Lisa's car. He'd already paid it, or at least it looked that way. So it wasn't even an emergency. He'd just prefer not to carry the balance. I typed out a reply, half a dozen versions, none of which I sent. First, "Are you serious?" Then, "You just called me a freeloader." Then, "Get Lisa to ask her family." I deleted them all. I didn't want to give him anything to twist. I left the message on read. A few hours later, he texted again. "Any chance you can help or not? Lisa needs her car for work. I'm short till payday." The words didn't have any heat in them. Just expectation. We'd always had this unspoken rule in our family. You help when someone asks, and you don't keep score. I used to believe that. But now I could see the game for what it was. If I asked, I was a burden. If he asked, it was just family helping family. I got up and walked to the kitchen, letting the phone sit on the counter. I put water on for tea and listened to the kettle boil. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I tried to think through the logic. Scott had a good job. Lisa's family had money. They lived in a bigger house than I did. But he came to me, the leech, for cash. I thought about the dinner, how Lisa looked away when Scott called me out, how my mom fiddled with her fork and didn't say anything. I remembered the way Scott had looked at me, waiting for me to laugh it off. My phone buzzed a third time. "Sorry to ask. Just tight this month. Let me know." No apology for the dinner. No acknowledgement of what he'd said. Just a request, as if nothing had happened. I made my tea and sat at the table. I didn't reply. I let the messages hang there. I wondered if he'd tell Lisa he'd asked me, or if this was one of those things he'd keep quiet, just between siblings. I knew what Mom would say if she found out. He didn't mean it. Or, we all need help sometimes. I pictured her voice, soft and tired. The hypocrisy felt almost funny. Not sharp, not rage-inducing. Just absurd. I didn't know if Scott saw it. Maybe he did and didn't care. Maybe he just expected me to play along, for old time's sake. I scrolled up through our old messages. I'd sent it to him the next day. He'd repaid me eventually. No drama. Before that, it was help moving a couch, picking up his dry cleaning, watering their plants while they were away. He asked, I did it. I looked at the invoice again. The shop was across town, not far from me. I wondered if Lisa knew her name was on the PDF he'd sent. When the tea cooled, I dumped it out. I went back to my desk and turned my phone face down. I didn't answer. I didn't delete the messages, either. I just left them there, waiting. I sat at my desk with my laptop open, my coffee half finished. The kitchen was quiet, except for the hum from the fridge. I opened my banking app, thumb hovering as the screen loaded. I scrolled down the list of transactions, watching the months flick by. Rent, groceries, the gym, Amazon, utilities. Nothing from Mom or Dad. No odd deposits, no $1,000 gifts, nothing that looked like the money Scott claimed I got. I checked again, this time going back further, almost compulsively. Still nothing. I clicked into the statement section. Downloaded PDFs for every month of the last year. I opened them, one after another, looking for anything that could be twisted or misread. There was nothing. I took my phone and started taking screenshots of the statements, careful to crop out my running balance. I blacked out my account number and the balance with the markup tool, then saved them all in a folder called Proof. My phone buzzed. Scott again. His message was short. Any luck? I stared at it for a minute before replying. I'll see what I can do. That was all I sent. My hands were steady. I put my phone face down and opened my email. The inbox was cluttered, mostly newsletters and bills, but I started searching for Scott's name. Nothing obvious came up, so I tried keywords: money, help, loan. A few old threads surfaced. He'd paid it back 6 months later, after I'd reminded him twice. Another was from last Christmas, where he'd emailed the family group thread asking if anyone had extra air miles. No mention of money from my parents to me, no promises, no drama. I went back to my folders and found one labeled family. It was mostly photos and a copy of my college diploma Mom had scanned for me. No secret communications, nothing that could be misread as a big transfer. I closed the folder. The house was quiet. I could hear the sound of the neighbor's dog barking outside, faint through the wind. It was the middle of the afternoon, and everything felt slow, suspended. I thought about Scott's voice on the phone the night before, the way he'd said it like a fact. Mom and Dad gave you money, so now you can help. His tone hadn't changed when I'd said I hadn't gotten anything. He just kept going. I went back to my phone. I typed out a message to Mom. Hey, did you or Dad ever send me money that I forgot about? I deleted it. I didn't want to start something, not yet. Instead, I clicked through more emails, this time searching for anything from Mom or Dad with the word deposit. Nothing. I sat back, staring at the folder of screenshots. I wanted to hold on to them for now, wait until he pushed again. My phone was silent. I looked at the time, almost 3 p.m. I closed my laptop, stood up and stretched. The kitchen tiles were cold under my feet. I poured out the rest of my coffee. I left the screenshots on my desktop, right where I could see them. I felt calmer with them there. I had proof now, something concrete. If Scott came at me again, I was ready, at least on paper. The house stayed quiet. I waited for the next move. The phone rings around 8. I see Mom's name flash on the screen. She never calls at night unless something's wrong, but her voice is bright when I answer. Scott said you're helping with their car. She says it like she already knows the answer. There's a long pause. I can hear the TV in the background, Dad coughing. I don't say anything right away. I look at my laptop and see the family group chat open, blinking with a new message. It's from Lisa. Thanks, Julia, for coming through. There's a pink heart at the end. I keep my voice flat. Did you help them with the car, Mom? She sighs. Well, no, not exactly, but she stops, and I hear her shifting the phone. Dad says something muffled. Mom's breath catches, like she's deciding how much to say. We've already covered their mortgage this month, she finally says. Lisa's hours got cut at the salon. I close my eyes and let the silence sit. I pick up a pen and write mortgage payment on the notepad next to my laptop. I draw a thin line under it. I can hear Lisa's kids screaming in the background of the group message voice note. There's a half-finished photo of their car in the thread, the bumper dented. So you paid their mortgage, I say. But you told them I'd help with the car. We're just trying to keep them afloat, honey. Mom's voice is soft, tired. They're having a hard time. Lisa said you might have some room, extra, after that raise. I stare at the group chat. Lisa's message looks smug, or maybe that's just how it reads now. I scroll up and see the old messages, Christmas photos, birthday reminders, the usual chatter. I don't answer Mom. I write down raise and put a question mark next to it. Did she ask you or did you offer? I ask, still calm. She hesitates. Lisa called last night, crying. She said Scott can't get to work, and if they lose the car, they can't make it to school or the store. We just don't want them to lose everything. So you paid the mortgage, and I get the car, I say. Is that it? It's not like that, honey. Mom sounds smaller. We just thought you're doing well. You could help just this once. I nod, even though she can't see me. Lisa's thanks is still at the top of the chat, getting reactions from Aunt Deb and Uncle Mike. Little thumbs up piling under her heart emoji. I never said I'd pay, I say, quieter. I haven't agreed to anything. Mom doesn't answer for a few seconds. Her breathing is slow. I can hear the creak of her chair. I know, she says finally. But it would mean a lot to them, and to us. I write family pressure under the other notes. My handwriting is shaky. I have my own bills, I say. Rent. Student loans. You know that. I know. Mom's voice is almost a whisper. We just thought maybe you could help. I look at my calendar. There's a work deadline tomorrow, a dentist appointment, and now this mess. I watch the group chat as my cousins start replying, all excited. Lisa sends another message, "You're a lifesaver, Julia," with a car emoji. I don't reply. I let Mom stay on the line. She waits for me to give in, but I stay quiet. After a while, she says, "Well, just think about it, okay? Tell me if you need to talk." I say, "Okay." I hang up. I write "think about it" on the notepad, then draw a line through it. I put the pen down and watch the chat fill up with more thank yous I never offered. I sit back and listen to the apartment settle. The only sound is the hum of the fridge, and my phone vibrating with messages I don't want to see. I waited until the house was quiet before I opened my laptop. I'd already checked our joint accounts and found nothing unusual, but something didn't add up. I remembered that my mom sometimes sent me old photos through the family cloud folder, the one she set up for holiday albums and recipes. She always said it was safer to keep everything in one place. I hadn't looked at it for months. I logged in. The familiar folders were there. Thanksgiving 2021, Dad's birthday, Florida trip. I scrolled down. There was a folder I didn't remember. Receipts. Not private, just sitting there with the rest. I clicked it. Inside were dozens of PDFs and image files, most with dates in the file name. Some were grocery receipts, others were scanned warranties, a few were old pay stubs from my dad's work. I almost closed it, thinking it was nothing, then noticed one file titled 2023-03-05 check, JPG. I opened it. It was a photo of a check, written from my mom and dad's account. The payee was Scott. $2,000. The date, 2 weeks ago. The memo line said, house payment. I stared at it for a minute, memorizing the numbers. My mom's handwriting was neat and careful, the way she always wrote checks for the church or the water bill, never rushed. I scrolled further. There were more checks, not all recent, but a few from the past year, all with Scott's name. The memos were sometimes repairs, sometimes utilities, but most of them were house payment. I downloaded one, then another, saving them into a folder on my desktop. I checked the dates, lining them up with times Scott said he'd paid the mortgage late, or when he said we'd had an unexpected bill. I kept thinking of the way my mom talked to me about money, always cautious, always a little worried. She never said anything about giving us money, not directly. If she had, I would have remembered. I thought of Scott's tone when I asked about finances last week, how he brushed me off, said it was handled. I wondered if he'd asked my parents for help before coming to me, or if he'd let them believe I knew. I noticed a pattern. Every few months, another check, always from my parents, always to Scott, always with some version of house in the memo. I tried to remember if anything had changed around the house, if we'd paid off something big, but nothing came to mind. No repairs, no new appliances, no emergencies. Just these quiet payments. I checked the file properties. Most were scanned in my dad's office, judging by the printer ID. Some were just photos, maybe snapped with a phone for records. I wondered if my mom kept these in case she needed proof later, or if she was just being careful. I thought about calling her, asking what she knew, but something stopped me. I didn't want to tip anyone off until I understood everything. I started a spreadsheet, listing the date and amount of each check, the memo, the file name. I added up the total, almost $8,000 in the past year. I felt a cold ache in my hands as I typed. This wasn't a one-time thing, or a loan to get through a rough patch. This was a system. Scott had gone to my parents, more than once, and let them pay for things I never agreed to. I thought about the way he smiled at my dad over Christmas dinner, how he joked about being the man of the house. I thought about my mom, asking me if we were okay, if I needed anything, always a little too gentle. I closed the folder and unplugged my laptop. I sat for a while, listening to the refrigerator hum and the pipes settle in the walls, breathing in the quiet. There was no anger in that moment, just a slow, steady wait. I knew what I was seeing. I knew what it meant. Sunday dinner started like every other week. My mother had made roast chicken and potatoes. The kitchen smelled the way it always did, garlic, a hint of lemon from the salad dressing. Lisa and Scott were already at the table when I came in with the water glasses. My father was opening a bottle of wine, twisting the cork with more force than usual. Nobody was talking much. Lisa kept checking her phone under the table. Scott unfolded his napkin and stared at the bread basket. My mom was scraping something off the counter, her mouth set in a line. We sat down. Everything looked normal to anyone watching. I waited until everyone had food on their plates. My mother asked if anyone needed more gravy. Lisa said, "No thanks, I'm fine." Scott poured himself half a glass of wine. I put down my fork and looked straight at my sister. "Lisa, how's the car now?" She froze for maybe half a second, then smiled with her lips, not her eyes. "Oh, fixed, thanks to you and Mom," she said. "Couldn't have managed it this month without you guys." I nodded. "Funny," I said. "Because Mom already paid your mortgage this month." Silence. My father's fork slipped out of his hand and hit the plate. My mother didn't move. Scott's jaw clenched. Lisa blinked a few times and stared at the tablecloth. I reached into my bag and took out the folded printout, the picture of the check from our mother's account, the one with Lisa's mortgage company in the memo. I slid it across the table, slow and flat, until it stopped in front of Lisa's plate. Lisa didn't touch it. She just looked at me. Scott put his hand over hers, but she pulled away. Scott said, "You went through our files." I shook my head. I just wanted to know what living off Mom and Dad really meant. Nobody said anything. My mother's eyes were wide, but she kept her hands folded in her lap. My father cleared his throat, then looked away. The only sound was the clock ticking on the wall and the traffic outside the window. Lisa finally gripped her fork. "I'm sorry," she said. Her voice was so quiet I almost missed it. Things have been tight." I leaned back in my chair. "You could have said something. Or at least not lied." Scott's face was red. He looked at my mother, then at me. "You don't know everything that's going on," he said. "There's more to it." He stopped. I looked at him. "Maybe. But you could have told the truth, instead of pretending the car broke down." Lisa stared at her plate. My mother looked from me to Lisa, and back again. She opened her mouth but didn't speak. My father finally pushed his chair back, stood up, and walked out of the room. The sound of his footsteps faded down the hall. Nobody ate. The food went cold. Lisa wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and said nothing else. I waited. Nobody apologized. Nobody explained. The moment just hung there, heavy and stubborn, like it was waiting for someone else to fix it. Scott stood up, grabbed his jacket, and left the table. Lisa followed, not looking at anyone. My mother started to clear the plates in silence. I helped her. We didn't talk. The kitchen felt colder than before. The evening ended without a word about what happened. My father didn't come back. I drove home with the windows down, not listening to music, just the streetlights passing one after another. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. The apartment was silent. I could hear the ticking of the hallway clock and the low hum of the fridge. My hands hovered over the keyboard for a few seconds. I made myself open my banking app first, scrolling through the last 2 years of deposits. I took screenshots of each month. There was nothing from my parents except the single check from last Christmas, which I'd returned and marked void. I found the photo I'd taken of the check, front and back, when I'd mailed it back to them. I opened a new Word document and typed out a list. Every date my parents had offered money, after the layoff, after my car accident, when I moved apartments, I listed them with a short note. Declined. It wasn't a long list, but it looked longer than I remembered. I opened my email, started a new message, and typed in my parents' address. I added Scott's, too. I typed the subject line, clarification of financial matters. I uploaded the screenshots in order, then the check photos, then the Word document. I sat back in the chair, staring at the empty body of the email. For a second, I almost closed the laptop. I couldn't picture their faces reading this. I imagined Scott rolling his eyes, my mother's silence, my father's clipped noted. I kept my fingers on the keys and typed. For clarity, I've never taken money from you. Attached are my records. I'm asking that this not be stated otherwise again. That was it. No greeting, no closing, no explanation. No, please. I double-checked the attachments. I read the sentence again. I hit send. I closed the laptop and sat with my hands in my lap. I waited for something to happen, an email bouncing back, a phone call, some noise from the hallway. Nothing. I stood up and put the kettle on. I washed a mug and set it beside the sink. I walked around the apartment, picking up a sock, putting away a plate, moving slowly. I checked my phone twice for a reply and saw nothing. It was almost 9 before my phone lit up. A new message from my mother. Received. No more than that. Scott didn't reply. My father didn't either. I made tea and sat on the edge of the couch, scrolling through old texts with my family. I noticed how many of them were short, reminders, questions. Let us know when you get there. The last time I'd had a real conversation with my mother had been the week after I started my job. She asked about my apartment, if it was safe, if I needed anything. I'd said no. She sent a thumbs up emoji. I set my phone face down and turned on the news. The anchor was saying something about rain. I listened, but I couldn't have repeated what she said. I kept thinking about the word, received. It sounded like a receipt, not a response. I wondered if I should have said more, explained why I was sending it, asked for an apology, demanded something. I didn't want to. I didn't want anything from them, except silence. At 10, I checked my email again. Still nothing from Scott or my father. I opened the sent message and read it again. I didn't feel better. I didn't feel worse. It was just there, like a mark on a page. I shut off the TV. I got ready for bed. I set my alarm. As I lay down, I tried to remember the last time someone had thanked me for something in my family. I couldn't remember when it was. I fell asleep with my phone on the pillow beside me, waiting for a reply that didn't come. Scott replied first. An email, not a call. Just one line, no greeting. That was private. You're making a scene out of nothing. I read it on my phone at the kitchen table, my hands flat against the wood. I stared at the screen for a while before closing the email. No apology, no explanation. Just that, like I'd crossed some boundary by bringing it up, not by what he'd done. Lisa's name flashed on my phone before I'd even finished reading Scott's message. I let it ring. She called again and again. I watched the screen until it stopped. A minute later, a voicemail notification appeared, but I didn't listen. She sent a text after that. Call me back when you're ready. I put my phone face down. About an hour later, my dad's message came through. He'd replied to my original email, but copied the family group thread. Everyone except Scott's wife, I noticed. All he added was, let's not discuss money at the table anymore. Nothing else. I read it twice. No mention of what actually happened. No acknowledgement. No one replied in the thread. It just sat there, another silent rule. I thought about how many of those we had in our family. My mother texted me privately, a few minutes after my dad's email. Sorry, didn't know it mattered so much to you. That was all. No punctuation after the sorry. I stared at it, feeling the words settle somewhere behind my eyes. I typed out a reply, deleted it, then put the phone down again. The house was quiet. I could hear the fridge, the faint hum of the neighbor's lawn mower outside. I stood up and walked to the window. It was getting dark. I tried to remember the last time my family had talked openly about anything uncomfortable. I sat back down and opened my laptop, rereading Scott's message. The words felt smaller now, like a child's excuse. No one called after that. No follow-up. Nothing from my dad. Nothing from Lisa besides that voicemail I still hadn't played. I checked the family group, thread a few more times that evening. My aunt sent a photo of her dog, and someone liked it. The thread rolled on as if nothing had happened. I made tea and carried it upstairs. I heard my neighbor's front door slam, a car starting. I checked my phone again. My mom's message was still there, unanswered. I left it that way. Before bed, I looked at the email I'd sent that morning, the one that started it. I read it slowly, word by word. It was short, just facts. No anger. I wondered how it looked to everyone else, whether they felt relief that I'd said something, or whether they were annoyed that I'd broken the pattern. I didn't know. When I turned off the light, my phone lit up again. Lisa, one last time. I turned it over so I wouldn't see. The room was quiet, except for the hum of the fridge downstairs. For the first time in days, I felt still. We sat around the table, and the clatter of plates seemed louder than usual. My mother passed the salad bowl without looking up. My father poured himself another glass of water, his hand almost shaking. Lisa stared at her food, moving it around but not eating. Scott kept glancing at his phone, barely touching his fork. No one reached for the bread. The silence pressed in, heavy and unnatural. Usually, someone would crack a joke about Dad's bad jokes, or Lisa would ask about work. This time, there was nothing. Every time someone's chair scraped, everyone flinched a little. I could feel Lisa watching me from across the table. She opened her mouth once, then closed it. My mother asked if anyone wanted more potatoes. No one answered. My father nodded, but she didn't move to serve him. Scott checked his watch twice in 10 minutes. I kept my eyes on my plate, chewing slowly, tasting nothing. Halfway through the meal, Lisa spoke up. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through everything. Was all that true? She didn't look at me when she said it. I waited a second before answering. I didn't trust my voice to stay steady, but it did. "Do you want to see?" I said. I took out my phone and scrolled to the folder I'd made. Screenshots, bank statements, the messages. I slid the phone across the table. She picked it up and scrolled, her finger moving fast at first, then slower. She paused at one of the transfer receipts. Her lips pressed together. She set the phone down in front of her plate and pushed away her food. Scott was the only one who didn't look. He kept his eyes on the wall behind me. My father cleared his throat. My mother took a sip of wine and watched Lisa. Nobody said anything for almost a minute. I could hear someone's watch ticking. Lisa handed the phone back without a word. She nodded once, short and sharp. That was it. No argument, no apology. She folded her napkin and put it on her lap, staring at her hands. My mother tried to change the subject. She asked about work. I said it was fine. Lisa said nothing. Scott mumbled something about being busy. My father started to ask about plans for the weekend, but nobody answered. The conversation died before it started. After a while, Lisa stood up. She said she needed some air. Scott watched her go, then followed a minute later. My mother started clearing plates, even though not everyone was finished. She didn't look at me as she took my plate. My father asked if I wanted coffee. I said no. He nodded. The old rhythm was gone. No teasing, no stories. Even the dog stayed in the hallway, like he knew something was wrong. I waited for someone to say something, maybe to ask me to explain, maybe to yell. No one did. My mother came back with a tray of coffee and set it down, but nobody touched it. She sat down and stared at her cup. I looked at Lisa's empty chair. I wondered what she was thinking, or if she'd say anything later. I doubted it. I took a sip of water, cold and metallic. The sound of a car door outside made everyone look up, but it was nothing. Eventually, I stood up and said I should go. My father nodded again. My mother said thanks for coming. Scott didn't look at me as I walked past him in the hallway. I saw Lisa standing outside by the garden, arms crossed. I left without saying goodbye. The air outside felt heavy, like the walls had followed me out. For the first time, I didn't look back at the house as I got in my car. A week after everything came out, I was sitting at my kitchen table, finishing coffee that had gone cold. My phone buzzed. Scott's name in my inbox, subject line, Family Cloud Access. I opened it. The message was short. Please remove any files related to our finances from the family cloud. We'd appreciate it if you could confirm. Thanks. He'd attached a PDF, Family Cloud Policy Proposal. I tapped it open. It was written by Lisa, dated the night after the dinner. There were bullet points. Sensitive documents must be stored privately. All members should refrain from uploading financial information without consent. Breach of these guidelines will result in revoked access. A little signature at the bottom, Lisa's full name, not even her usual nickname. I stared at the screen. The night after the reveal, she'd stayed up writing this. I wondered if she'd slept at all. Scott didn't mention the argument, or the fact that I'd exposed what they were hiding. Just a sterile request, like this was something we did every day. I opened the family cloud on my laptop. The folders were all still there. Photos of old holidays, scanned receipts, tax documents. I found the files I'd uploaded, spreadsheets, screenshots, a few PDFs labeled with dates. I deleted them, one by one. There was nothing left in the folder except Lisa's policy proposal. I left that untouched. I went back to Scott's email, hit reply all. I typed, I've deleted the files. But if you want privacy, maybe don't store your secrets in a shared folder. Sent it. A few minutes later, a notification. My parents had replied. My dad, always brief, will be changing access privileges on the folder. Please let us know if you need anything from it before then. My mom sent a separate message. She said she hoped we could all move on, and that the folder would only be for memories from now on. I closed my laptop. I could still hear the echo of Lisa's voice in that PDF, formal, defensive, like she was trying to draw a line that had already been crossed. In the family group chat, no one said anything about the files. Scott posted a photo of his dog the next morning. Lisa sent a thumbs up. My mom pasted a recipe for zucchini bread. No one mentioned the money, or the folder, or me. Later that week, I noticed I couldn't open the cloud folder anymore. Access denied. No explanation, just a message. The owner has removed your permissions. I waited to see if someone would text. No one did. The group chat slowed down. My brother still sent the occasional meme, but there wasn't the usual back and forth. I scrolled up through the old messages, looking for something that felt normal. It all seemed like it belonged to someone else. On Saturday, my dad called. He asked if I was still coming for Sunday dinner. I said I'd see how I felt. He didn't push. I could hear the TV in the background, my mom's voice asking who it was. He said, "It's her," and then he hung up. I never got a message from Lisa. I never got an apology, or even a thank you for deleting the files. The policy proposal stayed in the folder, for all I knew, a little monument to her version of damage control. The family group chat kept going, but it wasn't the same. Every message felt like it was missing something, or maybe just pretending nothing had happened. It was quieter. No jokes, no teasing, just logistics. Who was bringing what? Reminders about anniversaries, the occasional forwarded article no one commented on. I didn't reply to most of them. Sometimes I'd type something and erase it. There wasn't much to say. The secrets were out, but the silence was bigger. I kept waiting for someone to break it, but no one did. The first week, I let Sunday pass without saying anything. I had always been the one to send the reminder. 6 o'clock. Dad's house. Bring dessert. Nobody messaged. I watched the group chat stay still, a line of old messages and an unread meme from last month. It was quiet in my apartment. I microwaved some leftover soup and ate it on the couch, lights low. I didn't check my phone for the rest of the night. On Monday, I opened my calendar and deleted the recurring event. The little pop-up appeared, asking if I was sure I wanted to remove all future dinners. I clicked yes. The block of color vanished from my week, leaving a blank space. I stared at it longer than I meant to. There was a small relief under the restlessness. Work filled the days. At night, I found myself scrolling back through old photos. Thanksgiving at Dad's, all of us around the table, faces turned to the camera. I remember who took that one, my sister-in-law, before she laughed at my mashed potatoes and told me to try harder next year. My father's arm around my mother's chair, the little glass of wine in his hand, my brother pretending to steal a roll. I moved the photo into a private folder on my laptop, away from the others. I didn't delete it, just hid it where I wouldn't see it by accident. The second Sunday came. I didn't get an invitation. I didn't see any new pictures in the chat. There were no updates, no casual reminders, not even a question about my schedule. It was as if I'd faded out of the rhythm. I went for a walk that evening, down to the park, where a family was having a birthday party under the pavilion. I kept walking past, hands in my coat pockets. At home, the apartment was clean. No dishes in the sink. I started a new book and finished it in a day. The only text I got was from my mother, a single line about a sale at the grocery store. I replied with a thumbs up. She didn't follow up. On Wednesday, the group chat pinged. My sister-in-law had sent a coupon for pizza delivery. My brother replied with a joke. I waited to see if anyone would mention me, or ask where I'd been, or if I wanted to come by. I thought about the last dinner I'd attended, the way everyone had talked over me. My father had asked about my job, but he hadn't listened to the answer. My brother had nodded, staring at his phone. My mother had changed the subject when I started to talk about my apartment. I remembered how small I'd felt, sitting at the table, passing the bread, trying to join in. It was a relief not to have to try anymore. The third week, I turned off notifications for the chat. The apartment stayed silent. I tried a new recipe for myself, something nobody else in my family liked. I ate it at the table alone and didn't feel lonely. I set up the archived Thanksgiving photo as a password-protected file. I told myself I could look at it whenever I wanted, but I didn't open it again. The rest of the photos stayed where they were. I stopped scrolling through them before bed. On Saturday, I got a message from a friend, asking if I was free to meet for coffee. I said yes. My calendar was open. I realized I hadn't had to check first. There was nothing else I had to do. The group chat went quiet again. Nobody asked why I wasn't there. I didn't volunteer an explanation. The silence held its own answer. I let it stay that way. I didn't make a big announcement when I left. I just packed what I needed and closed my own bank account. My name came off the shared credit card. I let the automatic payments bounce and ignored the calls from Scott when he realized the car insurance wasn't covered anymore. Lisa texted me asking if I could just this once help out with her rent shortfall. I didn't reply. I found a small apartment, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I set up online bill pay with only my name attached. The first week on my own, I sat on the floor eating boxed mac and cheese and felt a kind of peace I hadn't known before. No one could walk in. No one left notes on the fridge about what I owed. My parents called once a week. I answered, but only for 10 minutes. I kept it to small talk. I never mentioned Lisa or Scott, and neither did they. I went to family dinners maybe twice that year. I never stayed past dessert. After a while, they stopped asking for help. Scott's emergencies became someone else's problem. Lisa moved in with a friend who didn't mind her mess. My parents learned to talk to me like a visitor, polite, surface level. If someone made a joke at my expense, I got up and left. They noticed. The joke stopped. The money in my account was mine. No more surprise withdrawals. No more checking my balance and finding it empty. I kept my boundaries simple. If it wasn't about me, I didn't fix it. If someone crossed a line, I hung up or walked out. It was quiet, but it worked. No one tried to drag me back into the old pattern. I let them solve their own problems. I kept my peace. 6 months passed. Thanksgiving came around, and I noticed I never got an invitation. The group text my mom used to send didn't light up my phone. My dad didn't call. I saw a couple of family photos on my cousin's Instagram, just the usual faces, minus mine. I'd already told my friends I'd be skipping the whole thing. Instead, 3 of us met up early and drove out to a trail none of us had tried. It was supposed to rain, but the sky stayed gray and dry. We walked for hours. No one talked about family. Sometimes we pointed out a bird or a weirdly shaped tree. We stopped at the lookout and ate sandwiches. I watched the wind move through the valley. I kept my phone in my bag, turned off the sound. When I got home, the street was quiet. Other houses glowed with big dinners, and I could hear a little laughter through someone's window. I showered, made tea, read a book. It didn't feel like any other Thanksgiving I'd had, but it wasn't bad. It just was. Around midnight, I checked my phone. One message from my sister. It just said, "It was quiet this year." No smiley, no question, just that. I sat on the edge of the bed and read it twice. I just smiled, half to myself, and put the phone down. I lay there for a while, listening to the faint sounds of my neighbors cleaning up. I didn't feel lonely. I didn't feel angry. What I felt was something like relief. Sometimes peace is just space, enough room to breathe, enough distance to stop waiting for someone to call. Was I wrong to expose everything, or did they deserve to be called out? That's what I keep circling back to, even now. There are moments when I wonder if I could have handled it quietly, just left them behind and rebuilt somewhere else. But then I remember all the years I spent biting my tongue while they kept pushing the line. Would you have done it differently? Or is there some point where enough is simply enough? I know some families are built to survive secrets and lies. If you've been through something like this, where keeping the peace meant letting yourself disappear, what did you do? Was it worth it? I'm not sure if I regret what I did, but I do think about it more than I'd like to admit. Share your story in the comments. I read everyone, and sometimes it helps to know I'm not the only one who's been here. If you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe and like. It means a lot. What's the price of family silence, in your experience?